Recently, Isaiah Thomas, the tiny one, not the Detroit Piston, has been balling out in the G League. So far, he is averaging 29 points per game on 66% true shooting, and naturally, this has been followed with more calls, as always, from people saying that Isaiah Thomas deserves a roster spot in the NBA. And as much as it pains me to talk about this in the way that I am going to, frankly, this is sad and annoying, and I do not like it. Now, this is not me harping on the Isaiah Thomas of it all in terms of him being, leading the charge to this notion that he should be back in the NBA, because obviously I understand why he has his own motivations for that. And I can respect the hustle. I can respect the grind, the fact that he has not given up, despite the fact that the odds are so dramatically against him. But let's be real, bro. He's not going to be back in the NBA. And if he is, it will be a short-term gimmick where he gets a bucket or two, and then that team releases him after a 10-day. Or he just does not end up cracking a rotation really at all. The last time I think I can remember Isaiah Thomas even remotely being an important part of a team, and I'm using the word important very loosely there for the record. The last time I can remember, he was a Charlotte Hornet. Yeah, he played 17 games with the Charlotte Hornets. I actually caught one of those games live, which was interesting. But he signed with the Phoenix Suns last year for 6 games. Then he was on the Hornets for 14 games. And he was on the Dallas Mavericks for 1 game. Then he was on the Lakers for 4 games. Then he was on the Pelicans for 3 games. The last time he actually played more than 20 games in an entire season was 2020. It has been so fucking long since Isaiah Thomas has actually been a key part of a decent team. And even before that, after Cleveland, or after he got traded from Boston, 15 games with Cleveland, 17 games with the Lakers, then the next season, 12 games with the Nuggets. So he played 40 games with the 2020 Washington Wizards, a team that went 25 and 47. He did shoot 41% from 3 on 5 attempts per game, which is very good, but everything else was not good. Not a very good assist to turnover ratio. It's basically 2-to-1 on that, which is not very good for his volume. And he's, a massive defensive liability. Let's go ahead and take a look at some on-off numbers just for what Isaiah Thomas did as a Washington Wizard. Offensively, they were exactly the same with or without him. And then defensively, they gave up 8.4 more points per game with Isaiah Thomas on the floor than without him. So his offensive impact, neutral. His defensive impact, detrimental. Absolutely fucking horrific. A 122 opponent offensive rating with Isaiah Thomas on the floor. That is horrible. It's horrible. Isaiah is in this class. The last 2 members of it have been Jamal Crawford and Carmelo Anthony, where we're seeing these like Hooper fans, the NBA fans who are just all about the bag work and all that type of stuff. They care so much about that aspect of things that they watch Isaiah Thomas in the G League, cooking a bunch of guys who will never be in the NBA, having a good offensive showing in a way that does not highlight his impact on winning or losing, and his incredibly bad defense, not to the fault of his own, but it remains the truth nevertheless. They ignore all of that and they go, well, look at this highlight reel. This looks exactly like the Isaiah Thomas that I know. And, it largely does. I can't even disagree with that. Yeah, here we are. Here's his highlights. These clips do indeed look like Celtics Isaiah Thomas when he averaged 29 points per game. The clips do line up. Very gorgeous pass right there out of the pick and roll. But the thing is that he just does not move the way that he used to. He might look like he's moving pretty good against these guys, but it's a whole nother animal when we're talking about the actual NBA. It's very nice that he's doing this. I'm glad that he has this, but the reality is he's just never going to be in the NBA again in any kind of substantial form. How old is he even at this point? He is 34 last year, so he's 35 now. We're talking about a 35-year-old 5'7" point guard who was already a defensive liability when he was in his prime in Boston, but he at least was better than he is now because he had more athleticism to him, better at like playing passing lanes and picking stuff off, things like that. But now that trade-off does not come with 29 points and 6 assists per game, does not come with shooting 38% from 3 on 8.5 attempts per game. Instead, that dramatic defensive liability is paired with mediocre offense that, rather simply, you can just find elsewhere for a player who is not as big of a liability defensively as Isaiah Thomas is. And I know it's hard to let go of the past, and that is where a lot of people get hung up on. People were calling for Jamal Crawford to still be in the NBA, like, well past his 40s. Like, not even joking, when he was like 43, people were like, dude, we gotta get Jamal Crawford back in the league, just because he had that game, was it with Minnesota or Phoenix, where he dropped 50 at like the very end of the year against a terrible team, or a terrible defense rather. Yeah, the Dallas Mavericks that season were, well, they were 18th. It's not terrible, but not good. Also at the very tail end of the season, and in that game, the fucking Suns lost. He had 50. That's cute, but guess what? They weren't good because of that. They did this thing for years, and it's like, what are you guys holding on to if not just highlights of them cooking at a lower level? Like, you would see Carmelo Anthony clips from him hooping in a Planet Fitness, and they're like, gotta league him, bro. He still has something to give. And he just didn't. He really just didn't. His last couple of years with the Blazers and the Lakers, he was fine. He was fine. He did his job. He could score the ball pretty well, shot the 3 ball pretty well. All nice contributions, but ultimately not a great impact anymore. These guys got left behind by the NBA, and a lot of people are so certain that they know better than just every executive across the NBA. Don't get me wrong, there are dudes who get blackballed from the league, but they don't get blackballed because their bag was too deep. They get blackballed because they said like free Palestine or something like that. That's not, you don't get blackballed because your buckets are too nice. You get blackballed for actual legitimate reasons. The reason that Carmelo Anthony and Jamal Crawford and Isaiah Thomas were not back in the league, and when they were, their opportunities were severely limited, is because they just were not ready or not capable in this version of the NBA. Because guess what? Players get old, and as they get old, their tendencies need to change in order to adapt to that. And if they don't, instead of being an adapted, more well-rounded, older, more experienced player, you end up just being the same player you were when you were 20, except you don't have the body of a 20-year-old anymore. So Jamal Crawford has had the same shot tendency since the moment he entered the league to the moment that he left it. And that was cool when he was getting 18, 20 points per game. That was cool when he was putting up some of the greatest highlights you'd ever seen in your damn life, especially for a non-all-star. But it's not enough to help not being a strong playmaker, not being a strong defender, not being a strong off-ball catch-and-shoot option. Carmelo Anthony, that's the one saving grace that he had at the tail end of his career, was that he could do that Olympic Melo catch-and-shoot three-point shooting thing. But other than that, there wasn't really anything he could contribute. Jamal Crawford, nothing he could contribute. And Isaiah Thomas, I'm sorry to say this, there's nothing that he can contribute. And it only makes the situation sadder the longer you draw it out, the more you try and actually make this a thing. I meant to switch the camera back away from Basketball Reference a while ago, so forgive me for not doing that. But yeah, please, can we just let it go? Stop doing it. Let's stop doing this for everybody's sake. It's not good. It's not healthy. Don't dwell on the past. There are new basketball players to watch. I know Isaiah Thomas was awesome in Boston. One of the craziest things I'd ever seen was watching that little man put up nearly 30 points per game. But it's over. That was 2017. If you watch that as a teenager, you're an adult now. It's time to grow up and move on. I'm not talking to Isaiah Thomas. Isaiah, keep being delusional. You're allowed to do that. It's your God-given right to be delusional as fuck about your ability to make the NBA. But if you're a fan of Isaiah Thomas and you're encouraging this behavior, you are enabling him. You are not doing him any favors, and you just look like a clown standing right next to him. All right. That's it. Is that how I'm going to end every video here now? That's just my classic. All right. That's it. Bye.